What's the time where you are and where are you listening from? Comment below. Time stopped for me when my dad passed on. It began as soon as I chose to let my stepmother and her son think they had taken all his inheritance. I stood next to my father's grave. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and lilies. I smiled even as tears fell. They saw exactly what they wished to see. A silly girl, broken by loss, so frail that she could not resist. They were so mistaken. The girl they saw was an apparition. What they believed to be a triumph marked the beginning of their downfall. This was never about recovering my inheritance. It was about taking it all from them, the way they had attempted to take everything from me. The mahogany-trimmed office of my father's attorney seemed more like a crypt. Brenda, my stepmom, was wiping her dry eyes with a tissue. She looked like the perfect picture of dramatic sadness. Her son, Chad, sat next to her, bobbing his knee, not so much as if he were at a reading of a will as if he were, waiting to hear his lottery numbers announced. The lawyer, a man my father had trusted for 30 years, cleared his throat and read the last paragraph. It was a total breach of every vow my father had ever made to me. He will put his business, our home, and his whole portfolio in trust, controlled by Brenda with Chad as co-beneficiary. My part, they designed a modest monthly stipend, a sum so insulting that it aimed to dominate, not sustain me. Chad's lips curled into a smirk he couldn't quite suppress. Brenda released a dramatic, soft sigh of relief, wrapping her icy hand around mine. "Don't fret, sweetie," she oozed, her voice dripping with insincere sympathy. "Chad and I will handle everything. You worry about healing." In that moment, right there, seeing them share smug glances, a cold, hard clarity hit me. The sorrow didn't vanish, but it crystallized into something else, something hard and unforgiving. I glared at Brenda. Her nails were perfect, and a new diamond bracelet sparkled on her wrist. I knew for sure my dad hadn't bought it for her, so I made my decision. I'd play their game. I'd be the shattered little girl. I would allow them to believe they had won. I'd have them steal every penny they could to make that fall all the farther when finally I took them down. My dad was a smart man, but his heart was blind in one eye, the size of Texas, and the name of that eye was Brenda. He met her roughly a year after my mum died. I was in college, still inexperienced, and he felt a deep sense of loneliness. Brenda burst into his life, radiating charm with her hair highlighted to perfection. She was a gallerist, she assured me, though I could never track down one gallery she'd ever had contact with. She laughed at my father's jokes and praised his business sense. When she talked about my mother's death, her sincerity felt forced and calculated. I wanted to scream. She also brought her entourage, Chad. He was a few years older than me. He struggled through life, depending on money from his mother's brief marriages. He had an air of relaxed privilege. He treated my father's house like his own hotel and me like his servant. He'd poke fun at my quaint literature degree. Then he'd shout into his phone about stock deals that never led to a real job. Brenda's greed revealed itself to me over time. A suggestion now and then to update a room with more modern and costlier furniture. She got a new vehicle since her old one wasn't reliable for the charity functions she claimed to attend. She had a ritual. She would take my father's credit card and say, "It's easier this way, darling." He, completely smitten, would give in to her. He perceived a lively, nurturing spouse who infused vitality into his existence. I perceived a predator in incredible clothes. I attempted to warn him once. I returned home from college for the weekend and saw an appraisal of my mother's jewelry on his desk. When I questioned him, he became defensive. Brenda was asking about its worth for insurance purposes, he maintained. Later that evening, though, I heard her on the phone, giggling. "He didn't even ask her," she whispered. "Such a man is an open vault." A sense of horror sat in my gut that night, and it never quite dissipated. My father's health began to decline a few years after that. It was a gradual decline, one that Brenda kept with unnerving restraint. She kept him secluded, saying he required utter rest. He told the friends who called that he was sleeping. His business associates instructed her to go through. She became the gatekeeper of his whole life, and she reveled in it. She was controlling his doctors, his calendar, and his data. Looking back, I see it was a clear case of undue influence, a gradual, steady takeover. The caring nurse was poisoning every relationship he had, until only she remained. When at last he died, she was the one with power of attorney, the one who had all the keys, and she could hardly wait to use them. My performance began the day after the reading of the will. I called Brenda, trying to make my voice crack. I begged her if I could stop by the house to pick up some of Mother's things. I begged. "Oh, honey, are you sure you're ready for that?" she said, her voice a sticky sweet burden of pity. "It's all so painful." She finally consented, and when I entered my childhood house, I found someone erasing it. Someone took down my mother's paintings. In their place, there were expensive-looking abstract canvases that felt soulless. Boxes stacked high-board donate stickers. My dad's books and old records filled them, the small items that marked his life. I did my job to perfection. I wept. I allowed Brenda to put her arms around me, her perfume overwhelming and victorious. I even allowed Chad to pat me on the shoulder in that superior manner of his. "Bad luck, kid," he told me, as if we were discussing a lost game of football. "But don't fret, Mum's got brains for this sort of thing. The estate's safe." Their first action was liquidation. They sold things at a pace that astonished everyone. My father's classic car collection, his pride and joy, sold to a private collector for only half its true value. The funds disappeared without explanation. When I questioned her about it with innocence, Brenda would wave her hand in dismissal. "Too much maintenance, darling. We've invested the capital into something more secure." She never told me what. I became a constant, pathetic figure in their lives. I'd call Chad for his expert advice. "Chad, I don't get these papers the lawyer mailed me," I'd complain, acting like an absolute moron. "Can you explain this trust business to me?" He would always share a boastful and incorrect view of finance, with his chest puffed out. His hubris was a fire hose of knowledge. He kept bragging about the killer, high-risk bets they were making. My conservative father would have run away from those. Each phrase was a gilded nugget of proof. One night, I accidentally forgot my scarf at the house and returned to retrieve it. I slipped in with my old key, the one they'd long forgotten, and let myself in. I could hear Brenda's voice from the study, hard and conspiratorial. My heart was racing, but I moved in nearer and held my ear against the door. She was on the phone. "No, he never had a clue," she cackled. "He believed I was an angel of mercy. And the daughter, better yet, she sits there and weeps. It's almost too easy." The fury that struck me was so powerful it dizzied me, but I jammed it down and resumed wearing my broken doll mask. The real break was when I discovered their sins exceeded greed. It began with a credit card receipt I stumbled upon in a dumpster they'd placed on the curb. I'd gotten into the habit of scanning them. Hidden among the bills for designer bags and posh restaurants was a monthly charge from a luxury jewelry shop. The amount didn't match any jewels I had seen Brenda wear. And even more bizarre, there were weekly fees for a boutique hotel in a town an hour outside the city. A town Brenda swore she disliked, referring to it as provincial. This was the first string I could tug. It wasn't about my dad's money. There was something more, a secret life paid for by my inheritance. This was the point at which the game shifted. They were not burglars. They were unlike any other liars, and their deceit ruined my father's reputation. If someone has underestimated or betrayed you, you know how great that feels. What would you have done in my position? Let me know down in the comments. If you love this story, please subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the notification bell so you won't miss the ending. Your support means the world. Now, let's continue with how I began to unravel their whole world. While Brenda and Chad wasted my dad's money, I spent my modest stipend on something better: information. That hotel bill was the clue. A simple search tied the jewelry store to the hotel. It didn't take a rocket scientist to realize an affair. But with whom? That was well beyond amateur sleuth abilities, so I sucked it up and did something the innocent daughter would never do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus, a retired cop with weary eyes and a demeanor that seemed gentle. I met him in a loud coffee shop, far from my side of town, and explained the little I had. I half expected him to look at a distraught girl spinning conspiracy theories. He nodded with deliberation. "Financial infidelity is rarely the only type," he said. "When there's smoke, there's generally a whole house on fire." Marcus was worth every penny. In 1 week, he had a name and a face. The jewelry was for a man, a business consultant named Julian. The pictures Marcus received were a kick to the stomach. Brenda and Julian smiled as they walked out of the boutique hotel. His arm rested over her shoulder. The dates aligned exactly with the credit card receipts, but Marcus pushed further. Julian was not only Brenda's boyfriend, he was also Chad's financial advisor, the man who was advising them on how to reinvest my father's wealth. The web was growing transparent. This was no mere affair, it was a full-blown conspiracy. While Brenda kept my sick father busy, Chad and Julian set up the system to drain the estate. Anya was the complete opposite of Marcus. She was quick, sharp-tongued, and emanated a sort of frightening competence. I handed over the few bank statements I'd been able to take pictures of with my phone when I'd made my visits to the house. I explained to her about the cars sold for cash, the shell corporations Chad had boasted about. Anya's eyes sparkled. For her, this wasn't a family tragedy. It was a beautiful, complex puzzle that she wanted to solve. As Anya dug into the trail of money, I tackled the legality. My new attorney, M.S. Albright, was a shark in a well-fitted suit. She recited the terms to me: breach of fiduciary duty, stealing inheritance, fraud. She assured me that Brenda, as trustee, must act in the best interest of all the trust's beneficiaries, including me. Using trust money for a secret lover and sending it to her son's dodgy dealings was a clear violation. The puzzle was falling into place. Anya discovered that Chad and Julian had established a chain of LLCs. They took my father's money. Then, they bought assets, like the car collection, at a big discount from one business. Then, they sold them at market price through another and kept the profit. It was an old-fashioned scheme of embezzlement. Anya even discovered wire payments to offshore accounts under Julian's name. This was larger than I ever dreamed. Each piece of new evidence was another rock for my slingshot. Marcus had the pictures, timelines, and a background check on Julian. This check revealed a pattern of similar scams. Anya had flowcharts tracing each pilfered dollar. Ms. Albright constructed a legal argument that approached impenetrability. And throughout, I continued to play the fool. I'd call Brenda, sobbing about how difficult it was to pay my rent. She dramatically huffed. "You must learn to budget, dear. Your father wished you to understand the importance of money." The irony hung in the air like a fog. I could have gagged on it. The more they patronized me, the more I resolved to stand my ground. This was no longer about justice. This was about revenge. They had made fun of my sorrow. And now, I was going to make them pay for each tear. Someone baited the trap. The perfect time, a celebratory dinner. Brenda phoned, her voice almost purring with delight. "Darling, Chad has negotiated the most wonderful deal. We're finally getting some real returns on your father's well on our portfolio. We want to celebrate, dress up. We're dining at Lucille." Lucille, the most expensive, exclusive restaurant in the city. A place my father had loved where we'd celebrated anniversaries and birthdays. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. They wanted to toast their success, built on the ashes of my father's legacy in his favorite spot. It was poetic. It was perfect. I was right on schedule. They sat at the best table, showing the arrogance of thieves who think they've succeeded. Brenda was shining with diamonds from a fresh source. Chad wore a smug grin and had a watch worth more than my car. "There she is," Brenda trilled, air-kissing me. "Aren't she sweet? We've ordered champagne, the fine kind." They spent the next hour going on and on about their triumph. Chad went into painful detail about his deal. I knew from Anya that it was another shell company to move money overseas. He spoke to me like I was a child. He used simple words and patted my hand when he said anything with more than 3 syllables. All I did was smile and nod, a most excellent camouflage of silent adoration. I let them drink. And they did. 1 bottle of champagne became 2. At last, when they laid the dessert menus aside, I knew it was time. I cleared my throat. "It's so wonderful to see you both so happy," I started, aiming to keep my voice steady. "And I'm so glad you chose here. Dad loved this place." Brenda's smile closed down. Yes, he did have taste. "He did," I concurred. "He even had a good accountant. He was a believer in things such as trust and fiduciary duty." I allowed the lawyer's term to float there in the air. Chad snorted. Oh boy, don't get all teary-eyed on us, kid." I maintained my eyes fixed on Brenda. "For instance," I went on, digging into my purse, "he would view it as a serious breach of trust if a trustee took money for himself." I placed my phone on the table and swiped to the first photo from Marcus. A clear-as-day photo of Brenda and Julian kissing outside that hotel. Brenda's face turned white. The color ran out in a way that resembled a magic trick. Chad leaned forward, his eyes squinting. "What the hell is that?" "That," I stated in a low voice, "is Julian, your money advisor, and it seems my stepmother's boyfriend for the last 3 years." I swiped one more time, a picture, then another. "It's strange that the trust has been funding their little vacations. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm quite certain that is misappropriation of funds." Brenda's mouth opened, but she said nothing. Chad stared from the phone to his mother, his face a tangled knot of confusion and growing horror. "Oh, but wait, it gets so much better," I whispered. I retrieved a thin folder from my purse and placed it on the table. It was Anya's report, broken down into simple, vibrant charts. "You see, Chad, your grand deal? It wasn't a transaction. It was stealing." I gestured to a flowchart. "This is where you and Julian employed a shell company to buy Dad's collection of cars for pennies on the dollar. And this is where you sold it for full value and routed the profit to an account in the Cayman Islands." I clicked the account number. "In Julian's name, as a side note." Chad gazed at the page, his mouth hanging open. He glanced at his mother, a frantic, wordless question in his eyes. He didn't know. He was a pawn, a handy, stupid fool. "Those were playing you both," I told him, really almost sorry for him. Almost. "You thought you were supporting an affair with Brenda, Chad. You thought you were a corporate wizard. You were accessories to Julian's extended confidence scheme. He intended to rip you both off and leave you two to take the rap for all the criminal offenses." Brenda gained her voice, a gurgling hiss. "You're lying. You miserable little girl, you fabricated this all." "Did I?" I smiled, a genuine smile that time, and it was cold. "My attorney, Ms. Albright, presented a petition this afternoon. Someone has filed a motion to remove you as trustee. It asks the court to place all trust assets into a secure account. This way, they cannot access them. It also calls for a full criminal investigation of both of you for fraud and embezzlement." Just as I expected, 2 plainclothes detectives walked into the restaurant. They leaned over to talk quietly to the maitre d', who nodded his shaking finger at our table. Brenda saw where I was looking. The raw, bestial fear in her eyes was exactly what I had hoped for. Chad was about to vomit right on the table. "You thought you were stealing from a clueless, grieving girl," I said, leaning back as the detectives walked towards us. "You stole from the one person who loved my father more than herself. She would have burned your whole world to the ground to get you justice for what you did to him." The detectives reached us. One of them looked at me, then Brenda, and then Chad. "Ma'am, sir," he replied. His tone was soft but unyielding. "We need your presence with us. We have certain questions we would like to ask you at the station." The backlash was a fierce storm that destroyed their reputations, finances, and freedom. The story made local headlines. A grieving widow and her son looked charming, but their quiet daughter exposed them as regular criminals trying to trick everyone. Their peers disappeared overnight. The charity boards disavowed them. They were social pariahs before the first court hearing was scheduled. The fight in court wasn't quick. It was a bloody, long war. With Anya's perfect paperwork and Marcus's strong evidence, they were stuck. Ms. Albright was merciless. It took years, but we fought back and regained the overwhelming majority of the stolen wealth. They recovered the vehicles, the jewels, and the money laundered into overseas accounts. Authorities caught Julian, their partner in crime, trying to escape to a country without an extradition treaty. To avoid jail time, he sang like a canary. He revealed everything he knew about Brenda and Chad's willing role in getting a lighter sentence. Authorities gave Brenda, the mastermind of the scheme, a long prison term. Chad received a shorter sentence, partly due to his cooperation with prosecutors. He accused his mother of manipulating him. They lost everything. The home was sold to pay fees and penalties. Someone took what little was left. They were left with nothing but public shame for their greed. And what about me? I was free at last. My father always wished for me to be appointed the new executor and sole heir of his estate. Retrieving the inheritance wasn't a big deal. It was subdued. It weighed on me. The money wasn't an award. It was a means to redeem my father's reputation. I started a foundation in my parents' honor. It supports the arts and literature programs my dad loved. That whole journey taught me something about grief. For a long time, I had to encase my grief in ice to function. Now I could finally mourn my father properly, not as a victim, but as the wonderful man he was. The betrayal left a scar, but it also forged a strength in me I never knew I had. They thought they were harming an innocent girl. Instead, they created a woman who understood her worth and strength. Alone doesn't mean lost. Alone means you're powerful enough to walk your way. And I was finally walking mine. Surviving this was one thing, but sharing the story is another, and it's been part of my healing. If you've overcome betrayal, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this video inspired you, please like it. Also, subscribe for more stories of resilience and justice. Until next time, take care and remember, don't let anyone define who you are.